Okay. Now it's recording. Okay. So we'll wait another minute or two, and a few more people can get on. Okay, 1 more minute. We'll start. Okay, we're going to start now. Sikha that we're learning now is in Chelik Tazayin of the Sikhas, the second Sikha of this Parsha Tetsave. Benigea de Mi'il, concerning the Mi'il, which is the robe, one of the big kahuna that the Parsha talks about making. Zog the Posik says, Vasiso al Shulov remained cheles, you shall make on the bottom of the Mi'il of the robe, pomegranates made of cheles, of blue wool, etc. And it says al shulov, it should be on the bottom of it, saviv all around, and golden bells in middle, around, all around. Rashi explains how was it done. As chosh the remaining agulim chalulim, these pomegranates made of cheles were round, and they were hollow. It's not like a solid piece; it was hollow inside. But still, when the Pasuk says that you should have golden bells inside, one might think that it means like this: since the pomegranates were hollow, so when it says you should have bells in them, means in every pomegranate inside that hollow part should be a bell. So Rashi says that's not the pshat. It's not the pshat. Nicht as the Parmenim haben sich gefunden in dem Cholof von der Remaining. It's not that these bells were found inside the hollow space, the empty space, with inside each remain of the remaining. Nor beineim, so between them. Bein shnei remaining, between two pomegranates, pamin echot, one dovuk was connected, but totally, and was hanging to shulei amil at the edge, the bottom of the rope. But it comes out that Rashi is telling us that the way it was, there was a pamin verimen, there was a bell, and then a pomegranate, another bell, another pomegranate, all around. And you call the inside in them, pieces between them, not inside each other. The Ramban, so the Ramban has Rashi's pshat according to Rashi's pshat, it comes out as lehoya remaining misham klum, that there was no purpose. They weren't used for it. They didn't serve anything. These remaining. There was nothing that they did. When Abe designed so obviously they were only there for decoration, for beauty. So why were they made like empty, hollow pomegranates? It should be like golden apples. This is the kasha. Now, to explain the kasha a little bit better, in the order 5, the Rebbe explains like this: that there are two opinions. Rashi's opinion is that the bells had inside the piece, they're called the klapper, I think. These bells had the thing inside. So when it says in the Pasuk that when the Kohen walked with this Mi'il, it made noise, How does it make noise? Each bell made noise. If you have the clapper inside the bell, it makes noise. That's how it made noise. But there's a Tetsave that says that the noise was differently. The noise was because the bells banged on the pomegranates. That made the noise. So according to Tetsave, there was a use of the pomegranate. It was used for the noise. The bells to make noise, and that to make it. But Rabbi learns that the pomegranates did not have that. I mean, the bells did have inside. The pomegranates did not make any noise, so there was no use in the pomegranates. The bells were not inside, and the bells themselves made the noise. The pomegranates were not used for anything. So the Ramban asks, so what was the purpose? Elamite, the purpose must have been for decoration. But he says, if it's for decoration, so why did they make the pomegranates hollow? Why did they make hollow pomegranates? They should make a different thing. They should have made golden apples. That's what he asks. And for the Rom, so the Rabbi Mizrahi answers the kasha. I don't understand. Why did he choose that it should be apples better than pomegranates? What's the idea behind it? Of course, Hashem explained, the kasha for Ramban is negate and prat for chalulim. That the kasha of the Ramban is mainly not that. The main kasha of the Ramban is concerning the fact that the pomegranates were hollow. The question is, the bells were not hanging inside the remaining, in the hollow part of the remaining. So but they made the pomegranates should be hollow. Why didn't they make it solid? So if we would learn that the bells are inside, then it had to be hollow. But if it was not inside anyway, that's the main kasha of the Rambam. If it says good, so that's a kasha. Leib movement is still not understood. Eiba is the Ramban's kasha. He's Norwegen, the Prat from Chalula, before all the Ramban's kasha was why they were hollow. Why does he mention Bechlal? This whole thing of the remaining, when he's noch Meshana, Stott remaining Tapuchim. And he mentions the fact that it's remaining, and he says instead of that, should have been instead of remaining Tapuchim, apples. Yasam kimi Tapuchim making golden apples. Now the question is, if that's not what the Ramban meant, they just meant ask why were they chalulim, why mention it? That's all. So now everyone mute themselves. I hear too much noise. So why does he mention Bechlal that the remainder should have been Tapuchim? Tapuchim is of gold Tapuchim. Bechura kann das Masb sein. Bechura could answer it. The Gefintas in der Meneda, eine given Lenoi, you find it the Meneda, for decorations, it had Gavim, Kafterim, Prochim. It had on the Meneda decoration of cups, Becher as we call it, buttons, and flowers. When the Kafterim is eine given Kemetapuchim. Rasha says that the buttons looked like apples. The Balda, the remaining Amilam genutzt das Rasha Belez Lenoi. So the kasha of the Ramban is, since the remaining were basically made for decoration, for beauty, so they shouldn't have been looking like pomegranates, nor like apples, but they met some nation, but muspeda from the Meneda, just like in the Meneda. They wanted to put a decoration, David wanted a decoration of a fruit. Which fruit did he choose? Apples. So since by the meal it was also the remaining were decorations, should have been apples. That's the Shaila. That's the Ramban's question. Es bleibt aber nicht verstanden, that is still not understood. Number one, das Gufa davar mabir. This needs an explanation. With was is why is the beauty connected to apples? We see that so, but that doesn't matter. Why is the taka connected to apples? And the second thing is Ladas Rasha, according to Rasha, was is the time was by meals I given remaining by the Meneda Tapuchim. So the Shai was why take? Why taka? In other words, an Ramban's kasha is taka a good kasha. What's the difference? Why by the Meneda to make a decoration of a fruit, it was like apples, and by the meal to make a decoration of a fruit, it was remaining. What's taka the reason? The questions here. Why is tapuchim more nay, and that's why by the Meneda, and why taka is a different that by the meal it was not tapuchim, but it was remaining. So the Rebbe explains it like this: Zweck von die Parmena Amil, concerning the purpose of why they had these bells by this row by the meal. Zog the Posik says, that when he's coming into the holy place, which means in the Mishkan, the Beis Hamikdash, you should hear it. His noise should be heard. If there's given again that Aveda in Kain Godel, and if there's so much importance by the Kain Godel's Aveda, to make noise that they should hear, as durch them nishma v'kelem, kele, that usgehit from v'layom. The pasuk says, if his noise will be heard, then he will not die. Was michlal lavat hashmei from it saying, if the noise is there, he will not die. From that we understand that if it's not there, chas v'sholom, he could die. Why is it so important to have this noise? And the Rebbe in Order 13 explains that there are other maforshim like the Ebenezer and the Rabbi Bechai say that the nishma kele does not go on the Kohen Gadol. The nishma kele means that the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol will be heard by the Eibishter. But that's not the simple pshat. The simple pshat is that it's important that the noise of the Kohen Gadol should be heard when he walks into the Kodesh. Why is it so important? Davon verstehen, for was is there the nishma, the klinge from the Parmenim ahecher be'el Kodesh. Why is it a must that the bells should ring and they should hear it when he comes into the Kodesh? L'chur is other should be the opposite. There's a pasuk that says, Leib berash Hashem. Hashem is not in noise, in a tumult, nor bekeld mabadaka, in a very quiet noise, thin, very quiet noise. So we see noise is not so good in Avedas Hashem. When we set it from Kohen Gadol Gufa, we see it by the Kohen Gadol himself. As ein Knisa lifnai v'lifnim b'yom HaKippurim, when he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur, he gave dafki on the big dizov, so he didn't wear these garments that we're talking about here, the 8 begodim, called the big dizov, the golden begodim. So if he wasn't wearing all these begodim, the mela on the meal, so he was not wearing this robe. Midam kelap amenim, it didn't have the bells. So we see that sometimes it's not good to have. So what's the purpose? That usually there should be the noise of the Parmenim and the Kohen Gadol. But Nishma Kela, and it's very important that it's negated to his life. Why? And the Rebbe says like this: the Ramban is Masbir. Ramban explains what's the purpose of this noise. As someone goes into the palace of the king, suddenly he deserves to die. And the Kela Parmenim, so therefore the noise that the bells made is Azevi Anetilas Reshus. It's like asking permission to come in and do the Aveda. So that's the purpose. Kasha was, why do we need this noise? Because it's like asking permission to come in. Like you ring a bell before you come in, etc. Und those were the Kohen Gadol darf nicht Netilas Reshus beim Reingehen Yom Kippur lifnai v'lifnim. But then why on Yom Kippur, when he's going inside, he doesn't need this noise, this Netil asking Reshus? If the noise is to ask Reshus, why wouldn't you need it on Yom Kippur going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim? The Lechula but sich gefordert beim Mekolishim v'Kal should have been opposite. The Kodesh HaKadoshim is even holier. Certainly you need permission to go in. Is there time? So the reason for it, as the Rabbi Bechai says, Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, Hashem shows the specialty of the Yidden. That the Torah said that in Kippur you don't need a shliach. They darf nicht onkommen to the Parmenim. They don't need these bells la shmiya kel to make noise. Like a person sends a messenger, say, I'm coming. That's what these bells are. In Kippur, the Yidden don't need a messenger. The Yidden, they wish is close to the Yidden, they don't need it. So that's the reason why we need the Mishma Kel, that besides in Kippur, we always need to notify the Eibishter, so to speak, and he's coming. That's why we need this noise. So we have a good explanation why we need the noise. Then Pirish come to it, but according to this shot that comes out, the fact that the Parmenim, the bells rang, it's not part of the Aveda. It's an introduction, a preparation to the Aveda. That's in order that when he does the Aveda, when he goes in, he should go in with permission. So it's not part of the Aveda. But that's not sufficient. Since the detail concerning the Aveda of the Kohen Gadol is exact, certainly such an important thing by the Aveda of the Kohen Gadol that's connected to death penalty, so to speak, canal, as we said. And the fact is that it made noise when he was doing the Aveda also. So first of all, even if it would not be doing noise during the Aveda, only before, it still has to do with the Aveda itself, because everything has to be exact. Certainly that it made the noise during the Aveda also. It's mistaber, it makes sense. So therefore, we must say, it makes sense to say, that this nishma kela, that the noise has to be heard, is something that is negay in the Aveda itself. It's part of the Aveda itself. In Order 26, the Rebbe brings from the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim says, "V'nishma kela koya al kol in Aveda." The nishma kela is something that has to do with general Aveda. So we see for sure that the shaykhs to that. So what's the explanation? What's the scene in the Benishma Caleb? Eine von den Bürim mit dem. So one of the explanations is like this. The Kohen Gadol getan sein Aveda als Shliach von Klal Yisrael. The Kohen Gadol did the Aveda not as a personal thing. When he did the Aveda, when he went to the Beis Hamikdash, it was representing all of the Eden. He was a Shliach, a messenger of all the Eden. Das meint b'meile, that means automatically. Aber in seiner reingehen Kedesh, when he went into the Kedesh, as the Pasuk says, nehmt mit sich herein dem ganzen Klal Yisrael Kedesh. So he went in, he took with him into the Kedesh all the Eden. As he verstandig und erklärt, kann man mit Baruch, it's understood and it's explained in many places, as the Aveda from Balei Tshuva, the Aveda the Balei Tshuva do, was it mit Tzad HaRichuk, what's that Aveda about Tshuva? He's running away. He was far from the right place, and Antleif from the Marai, running away from the evil. So it says in many places, is mitarash. When you run away from something that's bad, it's with noise. As like somebody runs away from a life danger, death danger. He runs, he screams, and that's the way you run away from bad. So about Tshuva was running away from bad things that he was. So automatically there it involves noise. The truth is, Rebbe says that not only by Baal Tshuva it's like that. By all types of Yidden, it goes with noise. I feel from them was not Avedas Rahman Litzlan. Even somebody doesn't have Rahman Litzlan in Avedas. Why? A person thinks how far he is from Hashem. It's not only about Tshuva. Even the good person does everything right. When he starts thinking, he's far from Hashem. Why is he far? Either far with the Nefesh Abamis in the Tokfe, or because he feels that his Nefesh Abamis, his Yitzhahor, is still strong. But Mele is that Mele, if it's strong, he is a something. He has an ego. And that's separation from Hashem. So he's far from Hashem. Or that sometimes it's not even because of his Nefesh Abamis. Sometimes it's because of the good things that he does, which comes from the Nefesh Lekis. But he feels good about it. He feels, oh, I did a good thing. So there is also a yeshus there, an ego. Taka Metzi is the Kedusha. It's Taka is something, an ego of something that's good, holy. Or before Metzi is still something other than Hashem. Need bittul, it's not bittul. So when the person starts feeling that way, then the Seder with Akel Rash Godel automatically awaken with a very big noise. So I'm playing from the matzav to run away from this matzav, from this situation. And in order 29, the Rebbe brings from Medish, Yalkut Shemeni, it says that the Malachim, the Kel Godel Hemakalsim, they praise Hashem with a lot of big noise. And he says, Lomo, why? Because they're far from Hashem. Because it makes sense if you're far and you're running away from something, from bad, because you're far from the Eibishter. So mainly you're running away from your matzah, from your yeshes, and you're running away from it. It comes along with noise. And the Rebbe gives an example. The Rebbe Baal Shem Tov, he asked the Baal Shem Tov, how come Chassidim make all kinds of movements, weird things that they do when they daven? But he answered, das ist bedugme wie einer, was trinkt sich in Yam. That's like somebody who's drowning in the water, drowning in the ocean. He makes all kinds of movements in order to save himself. And he screams as loud as he can, that they save him. Und sicher lacht keiner nicht für seine Tnuas in the world. No one laughs at the noises that he's screaming and the movements that he's making, because he's doing it in his matzah. So the same thing by every Yid. Every Yid is matzah in Avedas Hashem is usually, Baal Tshuva certainly makes noise because he's running away. But even if not running away from Avedas, but you're running away from your yeshes, running to the Eibishter, so it comes along with noise. And b'meila, you have to have noise. Noise is a good thing in Aveda. We have Sinitka Stira from the Pasuk Leib Hashem, not a contradiction to the Pasuk where it says that Hashem is not through Rash, not through noises. So the Rebbe is Medayek, while the diuk in them is Leib Rash Havaya. When it says Hashem's name Leib Rash, it doesn't say Shem Elokim, it says Havaya. That means when you're connected to Havaya, you don't make Rash. Meaning, in order to be a vessel, to connect to Shem Havaya, that's higher than the worlds. Then the attack has to be quiet. You have to be pitachas habitl, because that's such a thing which is so high, and if you to be a kela there, you have to be mevatel yourself completely. Hashenkim and the Aveda is nor verbunden mit antleifen for yeshus and mitzias, but if the Aveda is only running away from your ego and for your mitzias, was he the greich to the pchina from Shem Elikim, and that's connected to the Shem Elikim. The Rebbe says in order 32 in Even Shem Havaya Atzmei, it's only Hey K in the Vov K, not in the Yud. But it's connected to Shem Elikim. If you're running away, you still feel Zelov Mitzias, and you're running away from Mitzias, that has to do with Elikim. Was Gitan Ort of Mitzias. Elikim is the shame for the creation. Shem Elikim is also Helem, Elikim Legematria Teva. Mitzat Shem Elikim is Shaychas of Mitzias. So when you're running away from your Yeshas and your Mitzias, you're connected to Shem Elikim. The Aveda is Kenal Verbunden Dafke mit Rash. This Aveda of running away from your Yeshas, which is most of the Eden, most of the time, that comes with Rash. When the Pasuk says Leib Rash Havaya, that Pasuk is talking about when you're trying to reach, when you connect it to Shem Havaya. Und das ist der Tag, der Aveda von King God ganz Jahre gewinnen Eiten von Nishma Keli. That's why a whole year round, King God, when he did his Aveda, it had to be with the noise, had to be heard. Why? Weil darf reinnehmen mit sich, weil Kedesh Eden, was a Seder Aveda, Knisha Kedesh, is the Kel Rash. Since we said that when he goes into the Kedesh, he's taking along all the Eden, because he's a representative of all the Eden. So this includes all the Eden, including the Eden, who their Avedas with the Rash. So he also has to go with that, because he's representing the Bali Tshuva, not even Bali Tshuva, but the many, many Eden which are on the level of Rash, that they're running away from their Yeshas. So therefore, he has to go in with the Rash because he's taking them in their Aveda, which is the Rash. This is hinted in the fact that these bells, which made the noise, were at the bottom of the Me'il. Shule means the edge, the bottom of Me'il. That means that the linya from Vanishma Kele, that shows that the fact that there has to be heard, there has to be noise, if that's connected to the lower levels of the Eden. Because that's why it's on the bottom of the Me'il means the lower Madrege. But Zeir Aved is on the Aved of the lower level of Eden is because they're running away from something, running away from Yeshes because they feel far. The Mele, they are with Rash, and the King Godel, who represents them, goes in with Rash. The Bais de Azhore, the Nishma Kele, gave him Leomas. And the warning in the Torah says it has to be heard, the noise has to be heard, and then he will not die. That means as in them is totally the Klolos Achayis King Godel. In this Nakuda that he should make that noise depends the life of the King Godel, the whole life of the King Godel. Why? If this noise is not there by him, which means will nicht Kelo sein in sein Aveda die Yidden welche sein in dem Chines Shule Amil, that would mean that he doesn't want to include the Yidden who are lower. As we said, the noise represents the Yidden who are lower. If he doesn't do that, that means he doesn't care about them. He doesn't want to include in him. But when he goes in, he should also include the people in their lower Madrege. And I feel event does is their farbas will halten by the Hecher Aveda Mekelt Mamadaka. It could be the reason he doesn't want to connect to them because he wants to be in the higher Madrege. As we said before, when it comes to Shem Havaya in the higher Madrege, then it goes Kelt Mamadaka. So maybe the King God doesn't want to make the noise because he wants to stick to the higher Madrege. But if he does that, he's not including those Yidden. And if he's not including those Yidden, that bottle Rachman will find sein Metzias and sein Aveda. So his whole Metzias and his whole Aveda is bottle. That's what the Pasuk says. If he doesn't make the noise, if you don't have the Parmendus and doesn't make the noise, he gives up his life. While the Shleimus from Klal Yisrael is totally in the Aveda was nemt Hala Shishim Yisrael. Because the Shleimus of Klal Yisrael is if you have all the Yidden, all 600,000 Yidden, which include Funda Sheichem Sheftechem from the top, which means the water carriers and the wood choppers. So you have to include them. And the King Godel who doesn't have this, his life as a King Godel is not real because he's not doing what the King Godel is supposed to do. But the bottom line is, so we know why the noise has to be when he goes into the Kodesh, because he has to include those people who their Aveda is through making a Rash. Das is aber nor by the Aveda from King Godel Meshach Kalashon. That's only the King Godel's Aveda through the year. The Knisos in Avidos is not in Kodesh. When he goes into the level of Kodesh, which is not the Kodesh HaKadoshim, not Yom Kippur. Dort is Faran and Nort for the Chaluk and Darkness in Yidden. When you go into the Kodesh, then there's a place for different levels. For the Sheichem Sheftechem, this Chetem V'Tzecha V'Shevem from the highest to the lowest. So it includes the lowest as being in their level of the lowest. The Faris Vanishma is Barash. That's why it has to be the noise and has to be because you have to include even those Yidden. Because there are Yidden who are like that. And in that Madrege, there are differences between Yidden and there are also such Yidden. Shenka David from King God will be in Akipurim in Kedesh HaKadoshim, but when King God goes on and keeping Kedesh HaKadoshim, is on Arash. There's no noise there. But then the Yidden are Malachim, and Yom Kippur they're like Malachim, which means the Isgalus from the Iskashers Achmis from alle Yidden mit Nebishten. On Yom Kippur, there's the revelation of the essential connection of the Yidden with Eibishter. So we're talking about then, when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kedesh HaKadoshim, he's taking in the essence of every Yid. And because every Yid, even those who are in the low madreg, who are connected to the bottom of the rope, so to speak, and Yom Kippur, they're all very close and very one, united with the Eibishter. Like it says, there's single to make to the unity of the Eibishter. So when all these people go into the Kedesh HaKadoshim through the Kohen Gadol, he's the one that goes in, but on their behalf, that's not somebody who's far and becoming close. Then there is some people who do that, make noise. But then is mitarash, then it's noise. But betachlis abitl, then it's completely bitl, but killed mamadaka, then it's quiet. So on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol did not make the noise because then you don't need, because by everybody is in the madrege where you don't need the noise because they're all close. And the words that the Rebbe said before, that and that they're malachim, so he says because you see that besides going to the Kedesh HaKadoshim, the Kohen Gadol did other Avedas on Yom Kippur. And there he did wear the 8 begodim. So he did wear the meal with the noise. So the Rebbe says that's why they're like Malachim, and the Malachim, they find the Kedesh which make a lot of noise because the Yidden are like Malachim. So they did make noise in certain Avedas. The Kohen Gadol, when he went into the Kedesh on Yom Kippur even, because in Kippur there are all kinds of Avedas, but when you go into the Kedesh HaKadoshim, that's where you have the etzem of a Yid with the Eibishter, and then there's no such thing as a far person who needs to make noise in his Aveda. This will explain the difference between the Ramban's opinion, why he wrote that if it's for beauty, should have made it golden apples, and Rasha's opinion, as in them fall, that was in this case, if you want to have the beauty, you have to have the remaining pomegranates. Based on what we said before, we'll understand the difference. Eden sein geglichen Zeit zu Tapuach, Zeit zu dem Eden are compared to an apple. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Eden are like an apple, and compare we know to remaining, to pomegranates. The chiluk zwischen say is what's the difference? What does the fact that we're compared to an apple represent, and what does the fact that we're compared to pomegranates represent? So the comparison like this. The dimion to Tapuach is comparison to an apple is masim to Eden is eine brema meile. Fits to Eden the way they are in the highest madrege. You bring some look with the Torah that the fact that an apple represents it's a good fruit, whatever it is, and the chose represents Eden the way they are in the high madrege. The pomegranate represents Eden the way they are in the low madrege. There's a posek says kepelach harim in the kosech. The Gemara darshans. The posek in Shirashirim says like a piece of a remain of is your head. Shirashirim, what Eibishter describes Eden, the beauty of the Eden, whatever. But there it mentions Gabi Eden that it's like a remain on the front of the face. But the Gemara darshans that the kosech means the konin shaboch, the empty ones of you. That represents the Eden who are empty of mitzvahs. Even those people who are rekonim, which are hinted in the remain, are also full of good and holiness. The hemshech is seen for the Maimar Azal, like the hemshech Azal say, even the empty ones of you are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate, which means that we're talking about the lower madrege. People who are in the lower madrege, that's the remain. And therefore, like this, in Pirish Rasha Pshuta Shumika Rasha, which is simple pshat, for the Eden sein werden gesehen, wie sie seine bepashtas. When you look at Eden simply the way you see it, is that's why you look at it and you see it in a simple way. Zetman the Eden shebashula when you look at those Eden who are in the low madrege, the bottom of the meal, as we say, you could see them in the madrege of rekonim, madrege of empty, which is like a remain. Und der Reber hat gedarf sein darf remaining. That's why by the meal you needed the remaining to beweisen, to show us the rekonim, that even the remaining, which represent the empty Eden, even lower than just empty. Afilu Pesha Yisrael, because the Gemara uses the word Afilu Pesha Yisrael, the bad Yidden are full of mitzvahs. Seinen Arayim Bitten Kein Godel HaKedesh HaKadoshim. HaKedesh, not Kedesh, I'm sorry. Is that they, even these people are very low, which is hinted in the Rimen. Also, when he went into the Kedesh, he took them along. He took the Rimen along. He's an Atel from Klal Yisrael. So he took him along to show that even these empty people, even the Pesha Yisrael, which is the Lashon of the Gemara in a different place, they're also part of Klal Yisrael. Unochmer Malay mitzvah skrim, and they're full of a mitzvah like a Rimen. So Rimen on one hand shows the emptiness. On the other hand, the Rimen shows the mitzvah. So we're talking about even Arlo Madrege, but really they have Taiv and Kedush, and therefore he went to the Kedesh, into the Kedesh all year round. He went with the Rimen, showing that he's taking in this Yidden also, because these Yidden are also Yidden, and they also have Taiv and Kedush. In Pirish, Ramban was nicht nur Pshatim, the Ramban writes in his Akdama that he doesn't write just Pshat, he writes also Ishmaka things for people who are more familiar with Kabbalah, more Pnimis HaTeirah. So the Ramban is talking from a perspective also of Pnimis HaTeirah. He's dort mutkish the Pnimis von Yidden. In the Ramban, he stresses the Pnimius of the Yidden. Was mit Tadem hot Ayid keshayches mitzuchet. But the Pnimius is not shayches in the Aveda. V'amech kulam tzadikim, they're all tzadikim. So the Ramban looks at it differently from the perspective of Pnimius. So he looks, they're all tzadikim, they're all good. And by the way, the Rebbe says, my high timer is the Ramban Mefarish, and this is the reason also why the Ramban explains that the Benishma Kela is not a chonah to the Aveda Shalachrel from King Godel. As we said before, he says, what was the purpose of the noise? As a preparation before the King Godel would go into the Kedesh, he has to make noise to, like, you send the Shliach to say that you're coming, etc., etc. But it's all not part of the Aveda. It's all Megeya as a hachonah to the Aveda of the King Godel that came after that. It's not part of the Aveda itself. Why? Because when he went into the Kedesh, actually into the Kedesh, he's in a darga from Aveda Tzadikim. He looked at it that when he went in, not only Yom Kippur, when he went in is also in the darga of Tzadikim. But killed Mamadaka. So the noise was only before he did the Aveda. Because you want to schlep them in also. So it's before he did the Aveda. But when he actually did the Aveda inside, then he looks at it that even then, not in Kippur Dafke, not in Kedesh HaKadoshim, really, those Yidden, every Yid is a tzaddik. The Mele, the noise is not negated to the Aveda, it's negated before the Aveda. So according to the Ramban, he looks at the Pnimis of the Yid. And those is the Kasha Lezaim Pirish, and that's what the Ramban is asking according to his Pshat. He said like this. He says, Rasha, according to you, the remaining were made Lenoi for beauty. So he said, Im Lenoi, if you're making it for beauty, for decoration, Yasam Kemit Apuchizov, should have made them like golden apples. And we asked the question, Ron asked, why apples? What's apples better than remaining? The kasha is like this. The remaining were not to be used. Nor if Aruis bring the Shenkai, the Milah of Bnei Yisrael, it's only to bring out the Milas of Yidden. Beauty means the beauty of Yidden. So the Rambam says, and in that case, you shouldn't stress the Milah that's in the Rimain, in the pomegranate. Why? Because that represents the Reikonish Shabbat. The empty ones are for like mitzvah. So you're mentioning the fact that they're empty and they're like the Rimain, but they're ilufunit metzat pnimiyusom. What you do have to stress is, you want to show the greatness of Yidden, show what their pnimius is. That's the beauty. Everyone is like an apple, a golden apple. As we said before, the apples represent the higher madrege of Yidden. Not an empty one. And that talking would be al derech in der Meneira, like a Meneira. Was it a Zion Neira, Zion Baramis, if Eden was Zion, the Messiah madrege is named Hashem. It says in Chassidus that the Meneira represents 7 branches, represent the 7 types of Eden. All Klal Yisrael are included in 7 types, because there are 7 meters, 7 types. So the Meneira represents all the Yidden, but in which way? All the Yidden, the way they serve Hashem. And there are 7 ways you could serve Hashem. With Chesed, with Gvura, with Tiferet, whatever you could serve. So the Meneira represents the Yidden, the way they serve Hashem. So Zayin Geveni Yed Ner, Kimin Tapuchim. So every Ner, they had these buttons which were like apples, because the apple represents the higher Madrege, and that's what it was, the higher Madrege, because the Meneira represents the higher Madrege. So Rasha feels it's comfortable. Rasha feels comfortable that it's a Rimain, and it's supposed to represent the Eden, the beauty of the Eden, to show that even those who are remaining, That you look at them, the pashtas, like Rashi's Pshutish Mikro, you see that they're pretty low. They're rekon, they're empty. Still, he took him in. This is supposed to show that he took him into the Aveda, because they're also included. And the Ramban says it's more than that. If you look at the Pnimiyas, they're all good. So they're not remaining more. So what it really should do is, should have been, if it's like you, that it's only for to beautify the Yidden, then it should be Tapuchim, because every Yid is like the Tapuch is good. So in the Kiddush, it should be Tapuchim. That's a Shaila. If it's Lunei, why is it a Rim and why not a Tapuch? But the Violet comes out, which one is a higher Madrege? The Tapuch is a higher Madrege.
It won't be a tzaddik then.
But nevertheless, the Rimen is the Tapuch is a higher Madrege. But nevertheless, it was a Rimen to take in even the remainder. But now the Rebbe says, not like that. You could say another aspect. The way it comes out till now, that which is for these people who are rochik and they running away from coming closer to David, but they're far. And that's why you need noise. That's a lower madrega than the killed mamadaka. Killed mamadaka is when you're in a higher madrega, as we said before. Is doing near in there. There is a maila, there is something better from one aspect in the Aveda Barash over the Aveda that we do with the beetle, which is killed mamadaka in the higher madrega. What is it? The Aveda be killed mamadaka is in the Hagbola. Aveda be killed mamadaka is Hagbola, which means Emes take, Emes, the Eivish state taki mit a beetle. The one that's serving Hashem is in a beetle. That's why it's quiet. In other words, he's settled, he knows what he's doing, and he's not going out of himself, and he reached the Madrege beetle, which is great. A Shenken Daveda from Nishma Kela, Daveda that makes the noise, is the Rash Godel Gufa Bavais, the fact that he makes noise shows as there is a Ruiz for the Agbolus Kelim, that he went out of the limitations of Kelim. Why does he make noise? Not normal, doesn't sit down and think, you know what, I need to get away from my Erichuk, from my Yeshes, so I'll scream. It comes automatically because he's out of his Kelim, he goes out of his normality, so to speak, and he screams without even thinking. So he's going out of his Hagbolus, out of the limitation of the Kelim. Can it magba sein these pilots? He can't control his excitement. Und der Rebbe kommt das heraus not Zeike Vekel, comes out in the screaming. And then quote the Rebbe quotes in order 51. Like it says in Chassidus, that the Malachim called Ifanim, it says this Barash Godel is greater than Legaved Aveda of the Srofim, even though the Srofim are higher. Why? Because there is a Mile in the Rash Godel that it's beyond your Agbolas, while the other Aveda is multiple. You're Yashvis, everything is fine. You take a bottle, you realize you're nothing, fine, but it's still Agbolah. Then the Rebbe continues, it says in Chassidus that if your Nefesh Abamis loves Hashem, because the Pasuk says, V'haftas Hashem alekecha b'chol levavcha, love Hashem with all your heart. It says two basin. So it says you should love Hashem with both the Yetzatev and the Yitzhara, with your Nefesh Lugis and Nefesh Abamis. In other words, even your Nefesh Abamis should turn around to love Hashem. So it says in Chassidus, the love of the Nefesh Abamis is greater than the love of the Nefesh Lugis. And it's for the same reason, because it's going out of the Agbolas of what he is. The Nefesh Lugis is Kedusha, so it's not out of the Agbolas. When those is aimed for the time of them was mokish about the tshuva and the aim tzaddik and gemurim mechem lamedei. That's one of the reasons why the level of about tshuva tzaddik can't stand there. But dafke in them rash from avedis tshuva zok tzcharut the believing from the shomer, because in that noise of about tshuva, that's where is expressed the infinity, the unlimited inyonim of the neshama, that it goes out of limitations. The reason he does that rash is not because he's calculated decision, while bitl is calculated. So it's a Hagbolah. So this is the Maila that we have, even though generally the other one is higher Madrege, but there is a Maila of Nishma Kele. From Kol Analysis, though I wrote, all this, there is a lesson for our generation, the generation that is right before Mashiach. Some people claim, it's true, because the situation, the low situation of our generation, we must get involved in spreading Torah and strengthening Yiddishkeit. You can't be satisfied by just sitting in your own corner, your own place. I feel not even if you're sitting in a good place, sitting and learning. You can't sit there just so someone will come, wait till someone comes to you and ask you to spread Torah. No, but you have to go outside, in Chutza, outside. And find Yidden who are pushed away. So people say, you're right, you got to do that. What's the purpose? What's the reason why we make a noise about it? We spread it and we make noise and we publicize it. But what's this as a native getting gas and from the Kelron? Why is it important to go on the street and announce loudly as Eden's own leg film, to announce that you put on film. Unklap mezuzahs of the team, put mezuzahs on the door. Give tzedakah, okay, to give tzedakah, give to charity. Why is that important? Such a behavior that we don't find such a tumult, such a shturim in the previous generations. Is there an answer of them? The answer is like this. Like from all the signs in the end of Masechta Seita, we see that we find ourselves in the generation before Mashiach. At the end of Masechta Seita, it says all kinds of things are going to happen right before Mashiach, and they are happening. There'll be chutzpah, there's all kinds of things. So now it's happening in the Darga Achik Tachtena, the lowest madrege. So we could refer to our generation, Shule Amil, the bottom of the road. It's the bottom. It's a matzav now that it's the bottom. That from Wissen sein. So we have to know the Shule Amil that when you're talking about the Shule Amil, the lowest part, and we're working to get the lowest part back to Yiddishkeit, that is in the lowest part of the meal. There they had the bells. At the Knisa from the Sug Yidin la Kedesh, that to enter this type of Yidin into the Kedesh, which means to enter them tachas Kafei HaShchina, under the wings of the Shechina, bring them back to Yiddishkeit, is ausgestellt na Neifen von Nishma Kela. That, in order to bring these people into the Kedesh, which means to be Mekar of them, has to be with the bells which makes the noise. V'adarabe, Dafke der Rash von Avedas HaTshuva is the tachas HaYilikah. We said before, not only you have to do it, we see from here. We said before, the mila that is there. The mila that's there, that if you're making the noise, because that means that it's pligvul, that something goes out of your limitations. Noch ein of them, there's another thing here. The shas mizet as by Eber it's saying is do akel amen shalrein. If you see by those who are against Eber, from the bad sides of the world. So you see there is kel amen shalrein, there is the noise of the people from Rome. Now this is a logic if you see in Horah 54 from the Gemara in the end of Makis. The Gemara says that when they came, Chachamim together with Rabbi Kiva came and they heard the kel amen shalrein, the call of the noise of Remi, and they were crying. Look what's happening to Arbi Samigdash is like this, and this is. We are destroyed, Yerushalayim destroyed, and here Rome makes a lot of noise and everything. They could hear it. So the Kiva said, if this is what's happening, the Abish is allowing this to happen by those who do his will, certainly it's going to happen by those that do his will. So that's what the Rebbe says. We see now by the Abish it's saying that those that goes again, that they make Kelamayna, they make this noise. All these modim of Klippe are done, not hidden someplace in the room within the room. But with the greatest publicity and the greatest noise. So the way to destroy the shturim, the noise of the clip of Sitrachra, it says a lotion in Tanya, the mina b'digmasa. When you want to destroy any midah of klippe, you got to take the similar midah in kedusha, and that'll break the midah of klippe. So it says manei b'yabelish benarget. It says a moshe from the Gemara that when you chop off a tree, you take part of the tree. How do you chop off a tree? With an axe, but the handle of the axe is wood. So wood, which comes from the tree, is the one that chops off the tree. So this is a mashal that to chop away the bad, you got to use something that is from their own mean. Mina with the Gmasa says from the same mean, the same similarity. If the Eser, those that do Hashem's will, do it in the form of a Nishma Kele, noise is heard. When Dafki in them Ort was gefindt sich Kel Amen Shalreimi, and do it specifically in the place where there's a lot of noise from Reim, which means from the clippers. There you should bring the noise of Kedusha. Das would bring it to Male This will bring that if by the Everet saying that they have this noise and they have this shturim, so the Eseret saying that those that serve Hashem certainly is going to be. By Eden, but saying Yeshua better for Hashket al Muslim, the Eden are going to live peacefully and quietly and surely. It's the lashon of the same Gemara there that the Eden will live al Muslim on their land, and this will be also through noise. Durch die Toka b'Shefer Godel Dafke, it says Mashiach will come, will blow the big Shefer. Durch dem Keil mevasa the noise that will notify, will tell us the special psura mevasa agula, tell us the psura. The code of Mamish very, very soon.
Thank you, Rabbi Shapiro. It was wonderful. Wow.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yes.
Shakayach. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too, everybody.
Thank you.